Good morning, everybody. Here we are again on another wonderful Wednesday, and we are addressing military culture. Yes, we're continuing the conversations, and we're continuing to be your resource for a safe space of discussing some of the things that may be ail you, or you may agree with, or not agree with, or just have a perspective on involving the military culture. And we've been talking now for a few weeks, and we've been talking about the transition. On last week, we talked about the mental health aspect. Everybody runs toward the PTSD and that very familiar nomenclature of terms that's used. But mental health has been an issue with the military for many years, and now we're at the point of where a lot of things is being uncovered with the pandemic and how people are really feeling and vocalizing and articulating these kinds of things. So we talked about that on last week, but today we got a great topic. Of course, I'm bringing along with me two of my favorite vets for the ride. I got my man Charlson Gaines, U.S. Army vet, and I also got my man Jeff Clark, another U.S. Air Force vet. I'm sorry, not Army, Air Force vet. I'm the only Army dude here. I got to get me some backup. I got all these there, but hey, I'll take it anytime. If there's no boots on the ground, long as the Air Force is dropping the bomb, I'm good to go. I'll sit in. We're talking about this leadership culture today, man. We're talking about the toxicness, and I was reading an article not too long ago, maybe a couple of weeks ago, before we decided to do this show, and I thought about what we're going to talk about today, and of course, you go into the aspect of what we're covering, how people feel about it. We are talking about the military. When you say the military, a lot of heritage, a lot of ingrainedness with the glory of America, what we serve and protect, the oaths that we've taken. All of those things come into play, and there's culture that we've all dealt with. All of us have served active duty service, so we've all have done that, and we know the culture of things that we've had to go to. That, of course, um, from sake of another word, we would never probably endure if we wasn't in that culture. A lot of things said to us, done to us, and how we were treated, we definitely would have accepted. But when they tell you to hold up that right hand and you're sworn in, there are a lot of things that you forgo as your rights when you get to serve this great country that we live in. And regardless to whatever anyone thinks about it, I would not trade my membership to any other country. And this is no disdain on any other country, but the freedoms that we have here are it's really second to none. So let me get that part out the way real quick, so nobody be like, "Oh, what are you talking about, man? Go to another country, man. Go somewhere else." I don't want nobody be trying to exile me, man, and get me out of it. But we posed the question today, and is the U.S. military confusing toxic leadership with tough love? Now, when we asked about that question, and I'm gonna put it up here in a couple seconds. Excuse me. When we asked about that question, we go to the term topic, and Jeff, you kick us off, man. What's and then we'll go to Charleston and try to get his point on this, his perspective as well. What do you think about when you think about that term toxic? Let's kind of work on that for a bit to get some understanding of what our perspectives are of that term.
Well, I kind of view the word toxic as like a different way of saying corrupt. It's been corrupted and jeopardized. Um, Anytime you put the word toxic in front of something, it's obviously a bad word. We associate it in a bad manner. But to me, toxic means it's been jeopardized. It's no longer has the integrity that it was supposed to have. We say toxic leadership, toxic management, toxic this. You know, I think it's a way of saying it's no longer its you know intended form. It's lost the integrity of what it's supposed to be, and we can no longer call it just leadership. We have to call it toxic leadership because it's no longer comprised of integrity.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. What you think about that, Charles?
Well, I agree with him completely, and I think about really the things that Jeff just said. How do we embody that? Like, what does that look like? And what I think about is when you show up to work and you I'll say when you're on your way to work, right? When you're on your way to the office and you are already in bad mood because of who you work for. Like it's a hostile environment when you walk in, your stress response is turned on the closer you get to the office. And it's not because of your job, right? It's not because of your MOS or AFSC. It's not because of the computer you use or your mission, right? Like when it comes to your task, you know your job, but it's that leader. It's that leader that creates a hostile environment where nobody wants to be there. And a lot of times, what that comes from is really that leader putting themselves over the other people. So you will obey me, you will listen to me. I'm going to take credit because I'm the leader. And it kind of starts there and I don't even know how to describe it, but it just kind of like bubbles up from there.
Yeah, it's you guys both bring along some great points in there, and thinking about that, I definitely think along the same lines of that. And Charles, you brought out the great point of which we don't really, I don't think we give credit enough unless we've been in that sort of like that walk, walk a mile in my shoes kind of thing. When we think about the toxicness of the leadership, we don't really, and it's not really observed or really talked about so much in the military because of the kind of work and the kind of inducive environments that you're currently or always in, right? You have those ever changing environments. Most of them are, especially in this time, I'll just go by example of where we are now with the state of the world now and how volatile all other regions are. Uh, the military is considerably pretty much on more heightened alert than it was when I was in the military back in the 80s and 90s. Like, well, in the late 80s, early 90s, and I got out early 90s right before it started. Really, this descent on being an on alert military force because I think when we first hit that in Saudi, that first bombing action and raid actions there in Desert Storm, and I think that kind of like put us on this trajectory is that we got to always watch our back now. And and then that just intensified with, of course, the World Trade Center bombings and Al Qaeda and all of these different offenses. And what it really led to was a leadership that we took the term toxic out because it was by any means necessary. We kind of went to the Malcolm X leadership kind of thing. Okay, we got to take care of this. We got people bombing us on our soil, right? We got people doing it, whether they're foreign or domestic terrorists, however it is. The idea was that we're under attack. So now I got to take out some of those liberties of which you felt pampered, or I can give you pampering leadership. To now, that's why I said, is it a confusing part of that was saying, okay, this is tough love now. How thin is that line? And I got some more leadership tips that I'm going to pop up, but I want us to work on this a little bit. How are we seeing that line being crossed so fervently? Because I know I had an article, that same article that I read, and let me see, I find some of the information on it, and it was talking about over the last 15 years. It said dozens of leaders have been relieved from duty for cause. They said something about Marine commanders for having inappropriate command climates. And when I think about that command climates, I go back to what we was discussing earlier. A few good men, you know what I mean? The code red, having those kind of climates that's inducive to someone really getting hurt versus the leadership and control. How do you think that we've really kind of like walked that line, so to speak, Jeff, in crossing it from toxic leadership and the confusion of maybe this is really not toxic leadership, it's really tough love.
Well, I think we've grown toxic leadership over time. It's been something that didn't happen overnight, and the people at the top, the generals and the admirals, got to remember, they were the commanders. They were the O5s and O6s, a decade ago. They're the ones who, excuse me, helped grow this. So when they relieve a commander of command and they say, well, you don't have a good work culture, that's your fault too. you
Yeah.
know that's 100% your fault too. You should be relieved of command. I mean, because you fostered it. It happened under your watch. And I think we went from tough love, and tough love is a tough thing because, you know, part of it is the nature of our business is kind of being a little rougher around the edges, being a little more blunt and honest. We have a lot more at stake, so to speak, and there's other fields that are like that too, law enforcement, personal security. I mean, there's not a big gray area because, somebody's life and safety is at stake. But, you know, I think we got too far away from tough love because we started using it and justified it as tough love. We started saying, we're going to do this, it's just tough love. And no, you've crossed the threshold because you're now abusing the term, and you don't need to be tough all the time. We try to, our egos get in the way of making smart and rational decision making, and we justify it by saying things like tough love.
Yeah, and I do think I do think we do that, and the justification is there, and then who's going to say anything to the military in essence? So because we kind of like military is kind of like the dad, right? A mom may know some of the things that the dad is doing is not really, all that up to par. Of course, dad is not trying to kill the child, but the mom, she may not agree to all of that those harsh beatings. And I know I got a few back in the day, and my mom used to come in after I got out with the alcohol and try to rub off the scabs when dad almost beat the skin off me, right? It's the same in the military. Like you have those leaders that have set this precedent, and the ones that's up under them, you really have no authority, especially really real authority, but even your moral authority of what you really would try to do or say morally is really taken from you. So the tough love just has to be manifested, however they see fit. And Jeff, you brought a great point in talking about the leaders, and that's where we go into this leadership part of it, because it's at the head, and they've created this culture that has really just manifested and for lack of a better word, has anybody ever came up with the guts to say, "Yo, we're going to do this different"? In the essence of that, are we going to change the way that we do things? Are we going to do that? And this is next question that I want to go into. That I really want us to talk about. So I want you to weigh in on this, man. What constitutes the good or the bad leadership? And then the second part of it often lies open to interpretation. So, which what we're talking about here, our interpretations of it, right? But what really constitutes that in the military and in that military culture? To you, what constitutes the good or the bad leadership, and how can we really identify that?
Well, there's two parts to this, right? And the first thing I think of when it comes to good leadership is you're leading people, right? You're leading people. You're not leading a mission. And what I mean by that is the mission isn't following you. You're not leading a mission. You're not leading a job. You're leading people. And so, are the people enthusiastic? Are they engaged? Are they committed to each other? Are they do they know that you care about them and buy into them? I always say leaders need to buy in to their people before their people buy into them. Leaders need to demonstrate the most loyalty, right? If your boss is loyal to you, man, that says something. You're like, wow, I'm the bottom line guy. I'm on the bottom rung of the totem pole, but my leader is respectful towards me. He's loyal to me. And then the second part of that, of course, is getting the job done. But here's the thing with getting the job done. Are you getting the job done because the leader buys into you, because you're committed, because you're engaged, because your coworkers hold you accountable, because you're all committed to each other? Or are you getting the job done out of fear? If you guys don't get this done on time, you're getting written up. How necessary is that, right? Yeah, it gets the job done. But what happens with the toxic leadership is the toxic leaders always feel like they have to crack the whip more. They have to lead harder. They have to do more work. And they don't realize that when they put their people, that you put your troops into a stress response, they're going to make more mistakes. They're going to have more accidents. They're going to miss more time because of stress related illness. That doesn't happen with good leadership.
Mm.
Yeah, and it really doesn't. And man, it's marvelous points that you bring, because we often lose we all, especially in the military, man, we often lose track of uh, that there are people that we're leading, but we get track, and you guys can definitely ride in on this with me. We lose track that it's a mission, right? I mean that we focus on it's a mission, but people have to do the mission, and I think that gets lost in the point of the leadership. And I think that really, I mean, you guys let me know if I'm off course here. I think that really equates to how leadership is today, non-military, right? They do the same thing. I think that it's the bottom line, numbers crunching, got to meet quotas, deadlines. Everything is tagged or married to the mission, and you forget about the ones that have to carry out that mission. And when you think about that, open to the interpretation part of that, what constitutes the good is that you understand that there are people that are actually carrying out this mission of what you want to have done. There's people that you put in charge in these different areas, and we know how the rank structure works in the military, where do you have people under you that are supposedly being on the same accord, and the descent is I'm the captain. Of course, you're the sergeant or you're the lieutenant or whatever the rank is under you. What I say goes, and what you say all the time is not really conducive to the men that you're leading. So it's a fine line of that because we have to go back to that insubordination and that fear of retribution and definitely get in trouble. I've seen guys, man, I've seen guy get sent to Leavenworth, man, because him and the sergeant got into it and he didn't want to do, he didn't want to do it. He thought it was threatening to the team, to the group. He told the sergeant go f yourself. He got written up. He got court martial, man.
Wow.
And like this is over like if you said something in a boardroom or if you got a leader at your job or you did corporate, you guys got a tango. No, I mean it wasn't no fist throwing or nothing. This is just verbal exchange, which should be allowed so there can be some discussion, right? But the sergeant, he took a little bit to that, wrote him up, man. Next thing you know, he was having Article 15, and he got court martial, man, over insubordination and conduct unbecoming. So there's that fear of your interpretation has to align with what mine is because I outrank you. So whether it's good or bad, the only open interpretation is that of the grade that's higher than you and how they view what they've told you to do. Man, I'm talking about these leaderships, man. I got a couple of other leaderships here, man. And I'm talking about, I want us to bring, I brought some different leadership styles in because I wanted us to wear on that when we're talking about the good and bad leadership. And these are some of the styles that I thought about when we were talking about toxic and being maybe that being blurred with uh, with tough love. And I thought about the servant leadership. Now, how can we have this servant leadership in the military culture? Are we supposed to be all service people, right? They call us service members. So it's already in your title that you're supposed to be serving, right? But do you see or have you seen servant leadership in the culture? You guys' reign of being in the military?
I mean, I have because, you know, I think a good leader or a good commander understands, what their purpose is. The best commander I ever had, like holistically best commander, wasn't even that great of a commander. He doing his job as a commander, he was okay, but he did all the intangibles correctly. He had integrity. He admitted when he was wrong. He took responsibility, and he was insanely devoted and loyal to his people, which empowered them, the whole squadron to do their job and to do it well because they knew and we knew, every single one of us knew he had our back. As long as we were doing what we were supposed to do and we were trying to do things right and we were trying to do the best job we could, he had our back unconditionally. Now, that was he timely on certain things, some of those other little quirky things he wasn't the great at. But he gets my best commander ever award simply because he did for 2 years in his command his people were number one. You did not step foot in his squadron and try to tell someone in his squadron what to do without talking to him first. Like he made sure we did our job and we did it well and that we had all the tools and everything we needed to do it. And he protected us, he empowered us, he did all the intangibles, absolutely all the intangibles. And he understood his job as a commander was not to run the show, it was to empower everybody else so they would run the show as a collective team. That's his job. That's servant leadership, in my opinion, because you know your role within the larger scope of things and you don't put the crown on your head. You put the crown on the desk and you say, we all have to wear this.
Yeah, it's what you think about that, Charlson.
Well, I want to give you an example of servant leadership. That's I mean, and servant leadership is exactly what this is. In 2013, because of some politicians, right? We can talk about politicians impact the military, and because of politicians, we had a government shutdown in 2013. I was stationed at Schriever Air Force Base, just outside Colorado Springs, Colorado. And so I was active duty, but we also had a reserve wing on the same base. And within that reserve wing, they had an OSS, Operation Support Squadron. And the commander, he was the epitome of servant leadership. And so understand that when you have a government shutdown, a lot of members of the reserves who are on orders have their orders canceled. So you go from making your military pay with all of your benefits and everything to now you're basically unemployed. Like, okay, we'll let you know when the government is back on and you can come back to work. And so there was this young airman. I believe she was an E4. She was a senior airman, and her husband was trying to get his own thing going, right? So he was a civilian. He's trying to get his own thing going. I think he was a personal trainer, but they were new to the area. They just had a baby. And so their main source of income was just turned off.
Wow.
The commander ordered her to come up with a grocery list. And he went to the store himself and bought a month worth of groceries, including diapers and baby wipes for her to make sure that she was okay during the furlough. And I was just like, wow, that is beyond leadership. He was serving her. The lieutenant colonel was serving the senior airman, and all of us were just blown away. Like, wow, this guy is the epitome of an empathetic leader, of a servant leader, making sure his people are taken care of.
Yeah, where you go above and beyond the call the call of duty if the cliche would fit, right. You go above and beyond. That is what we really in essence and that's what I always felt like when I went away to the military. It was a two-part thing. First and foremost, I really wanted to travel, and I wasn't really ready for college, right? So, and when I went in and the age frame I was, like, dad only gave you a couple options, right? You go get a job, go into college, or you join the military. I don't even know if they use those three terminologies for kids these days when the parents want to get them out the house, or not necessarily get them out the house, but want to start them on the adulthood, right?
Yes.
After you get out of high school, and I know when I came up, and I'm sure you guys can definitely agree with this. We got out of high school. There was points in time as you being a man. Now you have to start making some men decisions, and in those three decisions, they gave me the three opportunities to choose. And my dad told me one, if he wanted to go to college, then he would help me go to college, but I would get a job. And so two of those went hand in hand, right? So you could go to college, but it wasn't like like not like laying around and then go to class where you want. Like you was going to work and then you get your college schedule and then you go to class. That's kind of how he had it framed for me. And then he said you could kill three birds with one stone. It's like you could travel, get college money, and you could get paid as a job. Go join the military. Sounds like, oh, I like how that sounds. Right? I want to get out, and see the world because that's how the recruiters panned it for us, right? They didn't know that I was gonna put me in the army. Don't put me in a armor crew, and I wasn't gonna see but like four states and overseas. But he showed me all these pictures of Hawaii and all these pretty places that I could go, right? So yeah, I'm still mad at my recruiter, man. 30 plus years later, I'm still hot at him, but it is what it is. but we think about those servant leaders. That's really why I joined, because I had thought of the military just such high esteem, is that we are servants really of the whole, we really want really the world, right? We're focused on USA and our things here that we are to protect and what we stand for, but we're really the world's police, and that's really what got me into the armor in the military, because they showed the video about us being the world police. We protect different countries we would go to, and I just thought that was just a great thing of servant leadership. But I got in, and I kind of see, I kind of saw things a little differently, and in the essence of seeing them differently, I kind of was like, this is not really what I thought servant leadership to be, and I saw certain examples, Charlson, like you said, of that. Those ones that was going above. I think one of my sergeants got into a fight and he had to spend a few days in lockup. Yeah, I came from rough luck. We was over in Germany, man, in the '80s drinking, and we got in trouble a lot. And he got locked up in the brig, man, for I think it was 20 days, and his family had two little kids and his wife. And our captain, he went and took stuff over there, made sure that they was okay, if they needed anything, checked on them and stuff like that. But do you think that's still going on today? I'm sure it is. But how does that go for those ones who have came back, who have transitioned now, and now they're in the area where they need our help in their servant leadership? Are we still being able to give them those same opportunities that we may have witnessed when we were serving? What you
I,
think,
I,
Jeff?
I
Oh,
think
you
it.
are. Go ahead.
I think it definitely still goes on. I mean, I have some friends, in the military still, of course, active duty at all different levels of command, and they are outstanding leaders, and they really take care of their people. The issue though that I see is when people work in certain environments where other people don't see them, right? So, for example, if you're in a secure area and other people can't see what's going on, and so I've actually asked senior leaders this question, right? If you're if you're a colonel and you have a captain who's a toxic leader, how would you know? If you're a
Mhm.
master sergeant and there's a staff sergeant working for you and he's a toxic leader, how would you know? And so I think a large majority of leaders are really doing the best they can and they're actually pretty good at it. But I mean, if you have 4 or 5 pretty good servant leaders in a row and then a toxic leader, that toxic leader is the one that can get you to go ahead and get out of the military. Like that one toxic leader can ruin everything for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Alexandra, she makes a point, and she mentioned, and thank you guys again. I know we're deep into this conversation, but I appreciate everyone that has came in and joining in the discussion, and just joining in with us, and weighing in on the topic of the toxic leadership. And there's a thin line between that and tough love. Jeff made great points in the beginning of this discussion, talking about a lot of times that tough love portion of that question just turns out to be a lot of times justification for the toxic leadership and the ability to continue to perpetrate that upon those that's being led. But Alexandria said our son is 17. He's interested in West Point. Great academy, great place to be. Definitely a bunch of servant leaders come out of there. She says he's a great example of a servant leader in his high school. Man, she makes a great point that a lot of us really kind of bypass, so to speak. She says she knows that he's watching her, and she try to be a good example and share what she's learned and continue to learn. And I think that's so much, that's so impressive, that even the mindset of being a parent and a mom and have a son that's interested in this, she's cultivating a servant leader to go into the service, right? To enter into that. And I think that's a great point. If we go to the second, I had another point of this leadership. I picked three points of leadership that I really wanted us to discuss to reverse that toxic leadership angle. And we discussed the servant leadership, but the next one I thought was very, very good, and something, the ethics bound leadership. Are we leading this ethically? A lot of time people don't take that into consideration. They think about ethical when it's illegal, right? We can definitely marry those two. Oh, if it's illegal, I know it's not ethical. But there are a lot of things that are ethical has nothing to do with it being against the law. It is just the characteristic of the individual who's doing the act, right? So we think about this ethic bounds, which we all supposed to be in the military. Took this oath, we stood there and said, foreign or domestic, we're gonna serve the whole oath that we've taken. Where do we lose this ethics bound leadership in the midst of it turning toxic? And then justifying with tough love. Jeff, what you think? Where do we lose this at?
Whew, that's a good one. I think we kind of lost our way when it came to ethics and tough love when we started using tough love far too often. And it crossed the line of being tough love and kind of more toxic and punishment. Um, I think we kind of lost the ethics of things when position became authority. I think a good example is the basic training scandal that happened down at Lackland Air Force Base, years ago, where some of the instructors and some of the leadership there were taking advantage of the students, and a lot of issues came up out of that. But I think they crossed the ethical boundary then, and they should have known. They should have known better. They should have known that their position tells them not to interact with those students. Instead, their position told them, and they let their position tell them that, hey, I have authority. So therefore, I can do things that I shouldn't do. And we've kind of lost that ethical way because we've forgotten when a position is given to you, a title is given to you, it's not because they want you to, let it go to your head. It's because they're giving you responsibility. And there's a whole lot of responsibility that comes with that. And you have to use it for that and not use it for other things. But people let, you know, too much power go to their head. And I think ethically, that's where we kind of lost our way with that because, you know, we see the good and the evil. You have the two sitting on the shoulder, and one's talking while the other's talking, and people have forgotten how to filter things out and say, well, this is an opportunity right here. I won't get caught. I'm in charge. And well, you've just crossed the ethical line even thinking about it. So I think that's kind of a big problem with the ethics right there. That we live in a society where ethics doesn't matter anymore. I mean, every time you see a journalist or a politician on the TV, they don't care about ethics. They care about votes and popularity. Ethics is gone, so we've lost our way as society too. It's kind of bled into that.
Yeah, it's definitely there. You carried it to the point where I was thinking you opened that door for me, so I'm gonna walk in there. And I just want to highlight. Thanks a lot for my man Benjamin chiming in. He's been making some great points, and he made this point along the lines of what you were just talking about, Jeff. He's saying that the senior leaders are rarely aware of how their subordinates lead, which is so very true, right? They put the order out there, and I think
Yeah.
that was even the premise of the movie. Colonel Jessup. He gave the order for the code red, but as far as the carrying out of it, the subordinates, you know what I mean, they took it upon themselves, even if it wasn't an order given, what they thought that they had to do, what the thinking process of what they had to do. And he said, "There is it. This is really true, and really, I'm glad that he highlighted that because a lot of times with this toxic leadership versus the confusion line of the tough love, the junior members, like you said here, there's no mechanism for the junior members, those that's under, to really report on that. And he also brings a good point to saying that speaking out harms your career. And he even brought it to the to transition part. He said, "I see this in the corporate world, but he does. There are some advantages in the corporate world. You can just leave. In the military, you are tied to those. I mean, you're tied like a ball and chain tie. You know what I mean? You can't get out. You got orders. This is where you got to be. This is who's your colonels or your captains or your first lieutenants, your staff sergeants, whoever they are. That's who you're stuck with. So it gets to a point of saying the ethics goes out the window, depending on who's doing the leadership. And we're not going to talk about the politicians. I think they lost. I can't even remember the last time they got on the same page with being honest and truthful and ethical about anything. I can't even go back in time as long as I've been. and find you one that said, "Yo, you know what? He kind of ran on principles and he kept them while he was in his office." Yeah, I think we run out of time on that one. So I said, what do you think about this ethics, man? And this leadership? Have we really lost it? Is there any more ethic bound leadership in the military culture?
Um, I think there definitely is. I mean, I guess I come from the perspective where the majority of leaders are they're very good and they're doing the best that they can,
Mhm.
and so they have ethics. But what happens is, back to what Jeff said about popularity, right? Popularity goes along with business decisions. And what I mean by that is you can be ethics bound, but when a line is about to be crossed and you're thinking, okay, I'm up for promotion this year. I want this quarterly award, a couple more quarterly awards, and maybe I'll get this package so that I can get this or that, whether it's going to OTS, or if you're an officer and you get stratted so that you're the number one, CGO of this many or something like that, right? And so what happens is a lot of times people are forced to make a decision, my career or my ethics. And from what I've seen, 99% of the time, people are going to choose their career. And what they often do is they use excuses like, well, everybody does it. I know it happens all the time. I'm going to let this slide. And I'm going to give you an example of that. I had a commander who I really liked. I thought she was a great commander. This was when I was a technical training instructor. And I thought she was a great leader, that she was a great commander. I did not realize how many of the instructors were illegally having intimate relationships with students. I didn't know. So we had an instructor call where she was addressing just the instructors. And I say that because there's other people on staff that are not instructors. And what she said was that she apparently set the record for the most number of instructor students, improper relationships, unprofessional relationships.
Wow.
And so where does she cross the line for ethics? She then said, from now on, if you see that, handle it at the lowest level. My respect for her just went out the window.
Wow.
Yeah, handle it at the lowest level. What does that even mean? When you see someone doing something illegal, it is illegal. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that gets you kicked out of colleges and universities. You don't do that with your students. And she said, handle it at the lowest level. In that moment, she made a business decision: my career or my ethics.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people cross the line.
That's a great example because handling it at the lowest level, that's like saying me to you if I saw you doing it, like, hey, bro, you need to knock that off.
Yeah, that's pretty much
That
what it
was,
was.
yeah,
Because it wasn't really the lower ranking instructors who were doing it. It was the E6s and the E7s. And I went to Korea after that. And we had this lieutenant who he was one of my students. I taught in the officer course. He was one of my students, and he was talking about this other lieutenant that he really wanted to hook up with, but he never did. And I asked him, so why didn't you? And he said, well, everybody knew that she was this captain's girl, the captain being one of the lead instructors for the course.
Wow.
And it's just, yeah. And that, again, people making business decisions. I'm going to choose my career over my ethics. In this moment, I'm going to disregard integrity.
mm.
Yeah.
I got a
Oh
lot of
man.
stories like that.
Man.
It's sad.
that's a perfect one.
Yeah. That's actually, man. That's more than perfect. I could never even script that. My I could never even have scripted that one better than just it being a real live story. And Alexander she ties in on just that story right there. Justification. People begin to justify their unethical behavior.
Yep.
And I mean, that's not even a slap on the wrist. I mean, that's pathetic ethical leadership, right? When you said, and the thing about it is, most of the time, there's a fear factor with those lower levels, right? Because if I'm a private, E2, PFC, corporal, whatever, the ranks in the different. If I'm up, just say below that sergeant level, there are a lot of things that I won't even have the gall to try to do for the basis of fear, right? Yes, because that's pretty much directed at you once you get off that boat at you at your basic training station. That fear level is so heightened to what you can do and who has the directive over you and doing what you can do that I don't even see that matriculating into that kind of behavior until someone who has been in this culture long enough to establish that behavior. And you put it right the spotlight right on it. These upper level, which is leadership, which is what we're talking about, right? This upper level leadership has formatted or cultivated this culture where those in my rank and above, we got free reign to do all of this. But down there, make sure you pass the word around. No, that can't be happening down there. And for have him to say, I'm not gonna talk to nobody because quietly speaking. I mean, I saw that in some relationships where guys were cheating. The Joes, their wives and whatever were cheating with different ones. That kind of thing still happens, and I'm sure it won't never stop happening as long as it's female and male people that's servicing, right? But when you have that clarity of understanding that that's against the rules for subordinates to be dating, I mean, it's just clear off of that, and for someone to cultivate that, I'm along with you and Jeff on that. The ethics have pretty much went out the window. So therein lies also have the oath that you've taken and the duty bound of service that you've taken as well. See, but we don't marry those together because we put them in separate categories. Oh yeah, that ain't got nothing to do with me serving the country. That's just with me, getting the hookup. That don't have nothing
Yeah.
to do, and I think it's so sad. Oh, my man Benjamin says Benjamin said those TDY stays TDY. All right, Benjamin, I ain't telling on nobody, man. I ain't telling nobody. There's been a many times. Look, we used to be in Germany, man, and we had what we call Oktoberfest. And anybody that's been over in Germany knows it's just celebration. A lot of beer drinking. A lot of times, I don't know why it was. I think it was just set up like that with the countries. They would send us Oktoberfest. They would send all the men out on training. Like we be somewhere in wild flicking and in these I call them the cold deserts because they was freezing places where nobody, no habitation. You just be out there doing military maneuvers, right? And all of the ladies and the girlfriends was back on the base, and they would have Oktoberfest. Why they want to have all that good partying and stuff when we wasn't around, I never understood. But when I came back, and a lot of guys were always in tumultuous situations with their significant others, from being because we would be out of training 3, 4 weeks, right? So they would not be able to see their ladies, their girlfriends, their wives, and they would come back and find out all these affairs was going on and all these things was. I just really thought that was just the greatest demoralizing thing that could ever happen to a serviceman when he's out there with his life on the line or doing those kind of things. Because we had a few people that lost their life on those maneuvers. It was live fire exercises, and everybody that went out did come back. And to have that in the presence of mind, and everybody knew what was going on back at Oktoberfest. All the soldiers knew. You know what I mean? They couldn't keep tabs on their girls, their wives, and it was just a bad situation. But there was nothing ethically bound there by no leadership to defray that. So oh man, it's some good. We talk about some good topics, man. We talking about some good topics. And I want to talk about this last one, man. This last portion of the leadership, which I really thought would bring us in strong. Because we talked about the servant, we talked about the ethics, right? And now when we got those two, we talk about the third one, operationally strong leadership. This is leadership. I think Jeff had alluded to with his leaders and the ones, and not only what he's alluded to, what Jeff is now doing in essence of his everyday work, setting up this strong operational leadership, and the same with Charlson. Jeff, feed in on this a little bit, man, of how you think this is going along moving forward with this military culture, and what are some of the things that you developed in this to be building strong leadership, because you're still a serviceman.
So, well, I'll start off with building strong leadership. I think you have to understand that when you get into a leadership position, your job is not to be in charge and to wear that title. It's to be the one who can facilitate. You're like a coach. Every coach, like a coach in the NFL, is not necessarily in charge. The general manager is in charge of the team. You, as a coach, you're in charge of operations on the football field. Now, you have a lot of other responsibilities, but you're not in charge of the organization. So that's where leaders need to understand that. They have a role to play, and they need to come prepared to play that role and to do what they need to do to make the mission successful. Sometimes that means changing your game plan and allowing the players and the teammates and stuff like that to come to you and dictate the strategy a little bit. So becoming operationally strong as a leader also means you're not showing up and saying, I got the plan, guys. This is exactly what we're going to do because I came up with it. That's wrong. That's not operationally strong. That is built to break. So operationally strong is saying, I have a plan, I have a vision, I'm going to share it with you. And then we're going to try it. I want your feedback. I want to hear what you think about it. And then together we're going to build this plan to be stronger. That's operationally strong. Unfortunately, what's happening today, and I hate to keep bringing up politics and stuff like that, but our military has become so politic heavy that it's hard to do just that. It's hard to do what I just said because there's a lot of politics involved, whether it's actual politics or it's military politics. We've talked about promotions. You have to answer that question. We're putting more and more stress on leaders today to worry about their career. And you have a 7-8 year captain who is thinking about lieutenant colonel. How am I going to get to 20? I have 15, 12 to 15 years where I could really screw things up. And then I'm going home. I'm not getting a second chance. So you haven't built operationally strong leaders when you give them things to second guess. You give them things to question. You have to be a coach as much as a leader, and you have to kind of prepare people to make those career decisions. And so you can tell them, listen, but we've built such a fear within the system, even on the enlisted side, your career means something. There's a lot of things you have to do. When I left the Air Force, they were saying, if you're a staff sergeant E5 right now, you should be worrying about how you're going to be perceived as a master sergeant E7 for when you need to make E8. And I was like, what?
Yes.
Like, yeah, your performance reports are going to go back anywhere from 5 to 10 years. I'm like, you're telling me that something I did at year 5 is going to be judged at year 15 for my next rank? So you mean 10 years of performance is going to be evaluated? That's what's going to decide if I make E8 or not? Like that, I understand the rationale behind it, but the stress that you're putting behind it is telling people you have to be flawless for 10 years because you might not make this rank. And you might not make it anyway, but you're putting that, circumstantial, stressors on people, in that moment. And then that affects decision making. That affects how they show up for work because every single day they need to make the marks. And then you're giving them the reason to focus on the wrong things. That's not operationally strong. That's stressful.
Yeah, you make some great points, man. So I heard you laughing up there, man. What were you laughing about, man?
Just well, the idea of being judged on your next rank, that's absolutely ridiculous. And I don't know any people who are doing that now, but I'm sure they're out there, right? Um, but when I think of operationally strong leadership, I want to give you a couple buzzwords that I say go with that, and then I want to give you an example of that. And so when I think of operationally strong leadership, I think of accountability and integrity. And so then an example of that for me was when I was at Cannon Air Force Base. We were at the 27th Fighter Wing. Shortly after I left Cannon, the 27th Fighter Wing F-16s turned into a Special Operations Wing. So if anyone's watching now that says there's no F-16s there, well, yeah, they left, I think, in 2007 or 8. But what happened was we had a very high ops tempo. We were meeting all of our targets. We were just getting everything done. And I mean, like, as a wing, everyone from POL, vehicle operations, intelligence, the pilots, life support, everybody, right? So we have a change of command. We have a new wing commander. And he looks at all of our data and he says, you guys are amazing. I bet you can do even more. So he raised the standards Raising the standards resulted in some offices now having to work more hours per day. The number of DUIs went up, the number of conflicts within the office, the number of Article 15s and LORs went up. I mean, we had a DUI every month. And then in the 6th month of his leadership, I think we had 3 DUIs.
Hmm.
So then he had a wing call. So it was mandatory that everyone who's available meet him, I think, in the gym or the auditorium somewhere. And in that moment, he said, when I raised the ops tempo for you guys, it was because I was proud of you. I believed in you, but I realized I made a mistake and I'm sorry. He went back, took away some of the paperwork that was done on certain people, and he gave everyone a day off. And he said, I'm going to roll back the amount of work we have to do because I made a mistake and I put too much pressure on you guys. And everyone was like, wow, that guy is holding himself accountable for what's happening within the wing. So that was like mind blowing, and it was an example to me. Like, okay, that's how you do it. That's how you do it.
Yeah, and you don't. I don't. You like to say that that's the norm, but of course you won't be naive to say that that's the norm. And when you look at that, though, that is a great example of what it should be and what we should be seeking after. But the truth in the matter is, that we don't have a lot of those examples to see, and they stand out to us so very much because they're not the norm, right? If that was normally happening, that wouldn't be an example for you. That would just be the culture of what you need to be doing. But it's so abnormal to hear these examples that you and Jeff have shared that that gets your attention. That's a wow, like wow, someone was actually leading like that. Someone was actually operational strong, had that mindset to say this. Because a lot of times we leave it on the table as to us as leaders what we can actually change. And I think this is where leadership really drops the ball. We continue to lead like the one before us. We don't get innovation in leading because you're coming up to the point of where all of us are individualized and we all want to be. My dad used to always tell me, he say, never say this, go along to get along. He's like, if I ever hear you say that, you're going to have trouble with me. And I never really, preface it to any because that wasn't my mentality. I was always a loner, always had my own thoughts in mind. So I never took any credit to that. But I started seeing that in action in different places, especially in jobs and working and cultures. Everybody went along to get along. So we wouldn't have any disruption of what's wrong. We're going to continue to muddle in what's wrong. And then we're going to continue to point blame at others who continue to stay in what's wrong. And it's built such a strength over us in the place of being a dynamic stronghold in all areas of leadership that we continue and repetitively continue to hold this as a example of how it should be. And we all know wrong, right? I've never went nowhere when I said to somebody, "Do you know the difference between right or wrong?" And they told me no, especially in adulthood. Do you know what's right and you know what's wrong? Why do we fight so hard to stay in a wrong place to be comfortable? And why we don't have that same fight energy to disrupt wrong for us to get right? I guess those are questions that I just like. I don't think that I will get the answer because every culture that I've entered into, whether it's been from the elementary and educational culture to the military culture to corporate culture, and now I'm seeing the same thing in entrepreneurship culture. Everybody's on the same pattern of, oh yeah, that didn't really work out, but hey, that's what everybody's doing. So I'm just going to do it too. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. Everybody's not talking about vulnerability. So guess what? Carl's going to talk about it. So and I thank you, gentlemen, as well for taking a stance, man, and doing it, especially on this. I know that we're going to touch, if not conversations, we're going to touch thinking and perspectives of those who come and join us on Wednesdays at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We're going to be bringing the hard topics. We're going to be talking and having the discussions where they may not be comfortable. But we're going to, as Alexandra said, and that's the reason why we're going to exactly fight, disrupt the culture, because not for the essence of putting a shame to it. Well, maybe yeah, putting a shame to it. But we want to put out some solutions and some directives and some perspectives that you should think of individually that you could probably change in where you are. Because good and bad is both contagious. I don't care how you look at it. They're both contagious. And it decides and it depends upon which one you want to be. Someone will be contagious with that. They just need to see someone else doing it. And a lot of times, this is where the leaders really have an opportunity to rise and shine. But they want to stay with the status quo, man. Oh man, this has been awesome, man. This hour will be coming up on us so quick, man. It just goes by so fast, man. But I'm gonna run around and run around this circle and let you guys tell us what's going on with you. I'm going to put up your information. Charles, I'll start with you, my friend. Put up this if you guys want to get connected to Charleston. He's doing great things and he's going to tell you more about what he's got going on. That's where you can hook up with him. And LinkedIn, he also gave me the information about this phenomenal offer that he's doing as well. You want to chime in on that, Charleston? Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah. So first of all, you put my LinkedIn up there, and so
Yeah.
yeah, anyone wants to reach out to me, connect with me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, we'll talk. And what I do is I'm an emotional intelligence life coach, and I will teach you and empower you to use emotional intelligence to really elevate whatever part of your life is struggling. Because really, emotional intelligence is the foundation of what we do. And so the other link, what I've done is I'm starting a membership community. And in this membership community, I have a newsletter, a weekly newsletter, a weekly mental health Ask Me Anything over Zoom for members. You have access to the Slack group. And in Slack, people can put their questions for me to respond over video if they can't make it to the Zoom. There's also access to other things like additional on demand courses, and there's also opportunities to build real relationships with each other. Because what I don't want to do is I don't want everyone to look at me like I have all the answers, when in reality, if we have a community of people who are struggling with PTSD, maybe more specifically, I have PTSD because I endured this when I was deployed here, something like that. Those people can connect and they can support and encourage each other. And that's what I really want, a community where people feel valued, they feel heard, they feel seen. So that's what I'm building. If you want more about it, want to know more about it, just connect with me. We can have that conversation, and I'll bring you on board. Thanks, Carl, for just
Man, it is
giving me
my
the
pleasure,
opportunity.
man. I love the discussions we're having, man. Jeff, let us know, man. I know this is where they can chime in with you and get all your information. Jeff, I'm gonna get your links too. Put them in the comments. If you got any links to anything that's going on, I forgot to please accept my apologies. I forgot to get your links for that so I can showcase them on here. But he's going to drop them in the comments also of some of the offers and the things that he's doing. But this is where you could connect with him on LinkedIn. Jeff, tell us a little bit more, my friend.
So yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. I think my website's on my LinkedIn page. So from my website, you can go find social media links and my blog and all that stuff. But yeah, really just preaching the truth on leadership. And I got these opportunities like this, preparing for the book launch. Hopefully we'll have some cover art here in the next couple of weeks,
Yeah.
and we'll be looking at an April release. So really just taking opportunities like this to share information and good talk with guys like you and changing the world.
Appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, Jeff, I'm not to come with Jeff. He's been talking about this author journey for quite a bit, man. And I've been listening. I've been listening in the background, man. And we just had some talks not too long ago about this authorship, and I'm starting to take this a little more serious than I had been because I have some things to share, and I think it's I don't know if I'm gonna be Stephen King or bestseller thing. That's not I mean, of course, if that happens, of course, accolades they come along with you doing good work, right? That's an acceptable part of the business. But I just want to share my experiences, my knowledge and my perspective because I don't think a lot of times we really give credit to people's perspective. I think we're just so much in alignment of this is how I view it and this is how you should view it, right? I don't. I'm an open book. If I see something that's brown and if you got a good argument to tell me that it's really beige, I'm gonna listen to that argument because I may see brown or I may be colorblind. You know what I mean? It may have been beige all the time, and I chose to see it as brown. And this is where we have to get into the aspect of being vulnerable enough to say, yo, I wasn't right on that. I was dead wrong, and I have
Yeah.
no problem saying that. I think that's what keeps me moving, man. I don't have a problem saying I was wrong. It's not the end of the world. Hopefully, I learned from that. I moved on. It was a lesson taught by whoever showed me the right way, and it was a lesson learned because I picked it up and I won't repeat that wrong lesson again. And I think if we carry our lives in that mantra, I think we won't fail, man. You guys can, come and check me out. That's my LinkedIn. You can go and find all of my posts on there. Yes, the vulnerability expert. I lead with that vulnerability and leadership. Those are my two mantras that I do marry together. I do a lot of that in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space where that is really needed. It really needs to be honed because they the ones that set up the culture of these places of employment of where we go to work at. And yes, we still got people going into work. We still got people going into work. And also check out my website because CarlsonWatkins.com/VTP. That's a vulnerability transformation program. It is a 4-week intensive where we go through my 4 steps of helping you embrace your vulnerability and get over those fears, self-limiting beliefs, and actually make you, prepare you, and give you the tools to be the leader that someone else wants to follow. Got a lot of leaders out here that's leading a lot of people, but if you take a poll on these people being led, they don't really want to be led by that leader, but he's the one in charge. So what can you say, right? And I got also a community that I'm building of authentic leaders, and we're doing a mastermind on every Monday evening, 6 p.m. to 7. If you go and sign up for the membership, there is a trial there. If you're not satisfied, you can definitely get your refund. I'm not holding anybody hostage. It is an engagement safe place where we met on Monday night, and I had people from 6 different continents in that group from all kind of industries, and they talked about obstacles and things that them being in leaders in their respective fields were having problems to. And the great thing about it, they got perspectives of their problem from someone not in their industry. You don't always have to be in your industry to get an answer. If you can go outside your industry and see how someone else's perspective to your problem can be solved, and you can bring that back, right, and be the hero. So those are just some of the things that we're doing. We're doing great things. We appreciate you guys showing up. We went over a little bit over an hour today, but we hope we said a lot. I appreciate everyone that's come by. Drop in the comments. Let us know where you tuned in from. Catch us on hashtag replay. Go hook up with these two gentlemen, Charlson and Jeff, fine men. We doing it. We'll see you guys on next Wednesday, same time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we appreciate you guys coming out to be with us. Thank you again, Jeff and Charles, man. And for everybody else, we're gonna tell you deuces. Till next week, guys.